Hey guys, thanks for joining us for this 122nd episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. Special guests on this episode include Nora Tobin. We'll be talking about her Nora's Naturals coffee, including coffee in your healthy lifestyle, and more. We'll also visit with a legendary drummer from Creedence Clearwater Revival, Doug Cosmo Clifford. Has an all-new album with Steve Wright entitled For All the Money in the World that is available August 27th. We'll also visit with windsurfer and swimmer and also author Fred Haywood. Got a book called Racing with Aloha that comes out in a couple of weeks. Of course, if you would, please take the time to subscribe, comment, leave some feedback, check out the shop, and share with your friends. Now, do you remember back in May when Jennifer Aniston and David Schwimmer both confessed during the Friends reunion that they were secretly crushing on each other back in the day? Well, that was enough for the rumors to start flying. A so-called source says they've been texting each other since the reunion. Plus, David supposedly flew from his home in New York to see her in LA, where she's making him home-cooked meals and taking him to her favorite vineyards. Now, their reps denied the rumors last night, but for all we know, they're just on a break. Yeah, I went there. Now, during the reunion, David said, quote, "The first season I had a major crush on Jen." And she responded, "It was reciprocated. So make of that what you will." Our first guest on the episode today, and if you know me, being a radio and podcast host, coffee is necessary equipment for the day to start. We're going to talk about how the right amount of coffee can improve your health. And from Nora's Naturals Coffee, we've got Nora Tobin with us today. And Nora, there's so many slashes after your name. We'll get to some of those. But first off, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm just so appreciative. I feel like I'm in great company on your show.
Yeah, we have a pretty good episode today. We're excited about that. Still get blown away by some of the guests that get offered. And Nora, I tell you, you've got quite the background. Where did coffee and healthy living, where did that come together for you, if you will?
Well, healthy living for me really started from childhood. I grew up in Lake Tahoe, in South Lake Tahoe, and my parents were very much into the outdoor life. It's a very small town, so if you're not getting out in nature, you're probably getting in trouble. So I felt like on the fitness and the outdoor adventure front, that really helped me just develop a wonderful relationship with exercise and workouts and well-being. And then as I progressed through my adult life, and a lot of the work I was doing and still do with corporate groups and as a speaker and event host, I integrate stress, sleep, nutrition, and immunity as topics throughout all of these conversations with executive teams. And coffee was definitely part of the conversation in every sense of the word when it came to nutrition and performance. And unfortunately, coffee has had a bad rap in certain ways as far as just not being good for you. But I would always reference coffee as something that can actually be a great benefit to our cognitive function, to our health and well-being, if we pick the right quality coffee, and if you can incorporate some things like intermittent fasting with your coffee and just get more of the benefits from the coffee itself.
Now, you talked about health, and you also, Nora's Naturals. How did you decide that you wanted to be a part of healthy coffee, if you will?
So Nora's Naturals, the original start of Nora's Naturals was actually through many of these events and working with the hospitality brands, like the Ritz-Carlton. We revamped a lot of the menus and did a number of different things, integrating my Nora's Naturals recipes with smoothies and coffee elixirs and clean cocktails. And then from there, I just always kept that name and utilized that name as my nutritional offering. And then I actually had a great relationship with a team here who owns a roastery here in Santa Barbara, where I live. And they actually did a lot of the work that I would have taken me years to do, which was to work with a number of single origin, multi-generation family farms in all different parts of the world. And so we came together to create my Nora's Naturals coffee.
Now we talk about the health, and this is something. Until I did a little research, your team sent me a little bit of info. Never really thought. You think about healthy things, and everybody talks about seeds. Seeds. Make sure everything is seeds are good for you, and I always thought of it as a bean, but it really is a seed if you really put it that way.
Yes, and the nice thing with coffee and the origin of coffee is that they're really quite inherent in antioxidants. Antioxidants being the power that allows the cells to turn over faster, our ability to fight off pathogens and viruses. And we can get antioxidants a number of ways through dark leafy greens, berries, as well as coffee and dark chocolate. So it has some incredible health benefits. It's just a matter of the quality and the source, as well as how it's roasted, and then how we consume it.
You mentioned something a moment ago. You said intermittent fasting going along with your coffee. Now, as a morning radio guy, I'm one of those that I cannot eat. If I start eating early, I keep eating all day long. So my food intake begins after my coffee intake ends, but that's not necessarily ideal either, though, is it?
Well, actually, you're spot on. So one of the most powerful and actually deeply rooted scientific nutritional regimes or nutritional strategies is intermittent fasting, because what happens, and for those of you who've never heard of it or tried it, essentially it's just shortening the time in which you eat, preferably to an 8-hour period. So let's say you start eating at 11 a.m. and end at 7, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., whatever works for your lifestyle. But in the morning, you're allowed to have coffee. That doesn't break the fast, preferably with a healthy fat or a heavy cream. And the reason why it's so beneficial is because in that 16 hours that you're not eating, your body goes into autophagy, which is rapid cellular cleanup mode, which means your body is going to essentially elevate its ability to burn fat more efficiently, increase its immune defense, and allow for cells to turn over much quicker. So the anti-aging process speeds up. So for you, actually fasting in the morning and having your coffee is one of the best ways to increase your energy to the brain and then your fat burning power.
What is it about coffee that gets the brain moving first thing in the morning? Because I can't open the mic until I've at least had a cup of coffee myself. So,
so caffeine does play a role as far as the receptors in the brain and how we ingest the coffee, and those receptors in the brain are then reactive to that caffeine, and that can stimulate our dopamine, that feel-good hormone. It can also accelerate our hypothalamus, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for attention. I think those times where you feel like coffee is detrimental is when we have too much of it, when caffeine can become an issue. And that can stimulate the amygdala, which is the fear response, and make you feel overly stressed. So it is a fine balance, but I find for myself, 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day is great for me. I have friends who can only do 1. I have friends who can do 6. So it's just dependent on the person and your stress levels.
Now, tell us, Nora's Naturals, how folks can find more info about what you guys all offer, and also let us know a little bit about some of the different items that are available as well.
Absolutely. So norasnaturalscoffee.com is where you can find the subscription, so the monthly delivery for the coffee, or you can even just try it once with purchasing 1 bag or 2. We have dark and light roast, and we can do whole bean or ground, so whatever you prefer. There's different benefits to both light and dark roast. Light roast is actually a little bit higher in caffeine, and it contains a little bit higher amounts of polyphenols and antioxidants because it's roasted for less time. Dark roast is going to be a little bit richer. It's going to give you that really traditional coffee taste. Light roast is a little bit more fruity and citrusy. And the dark roast is going to have an ability to increase your B vitamin intake, which is accelerating your metabolism. So 2 great options. And then I also have daily wellness strategies, recipes, my Nora's Naturals nutrition on my Instagram at Nora Tobin. So would love to connect with everybody there as well. And then I started recently, you'd be a great person to interview for it. It's the Coffee and Conversation series. So I interview different leaders from a cross-section of industries about their performance. And we have some of those interviews on norrisnaturalscoffee.com.
Coffee goes hand in hand with conversation, doesn't it?
It really does. You and I are both drinking our coffee. And it really is. I think coffee is so amazing because it has connected cultures. It brings people together in this lovely way. And it's this universal need for the most part, where everybody starts their day in this ritual, which is wonderful in a very busy world. It's a nice thing to know everybody's doing something similar.
When did your love and fascination of coffee begin?
I was actually training to be a professional, or I was trying to be a professional beach volleyball player. And I was cleaning this gym here in Santa Barbara in exchange for training. And a lot of the NFL and NBA teams were coming in, and I just felt way over my head. And I actually, to that point, was only drinking green tea. And that's when I started realizing I needed a little bit more of the caffeine because I needed to literally step my game up. And so I started drinking coffee. And then from then on, it was like, I was totally hooked.
Now, how do you work coffee into a healthy daily routine? Because I know that healthy living is such a huge part of your life as well.
So I'll get up and have my coffee first thing in the morning. I find that, just like you had mentioned, I need it first thing. Some will wait an hour, let their body start to wake up. Their cortisol levels will rise in the morning, so you naturally have that energy burst. But for me, I start it first thing. And then I usually drink coffee throughout the morning up until about 12 or 1. And I find that if I drink it past then, I do have trouble sleeping if I drink it later in the day, which I think is probably common for a lot of people. I've utilized some of my Nora's Naturals elixir recipes to upgrade my coffee. So a lot of times I'll just drink it black with some heavy cream, or I'll steam some, there's so many great creamers out there. So some type of cream. But then I've also done it where if I take the time and blend it, I'll blend in some collagen protein powder into my coffee, as well as some spices like nutmeg and cinnamon, which are very anti-inflammatory. So it can be a great resource daily for those extra nutrients that we might not be getting later in the day. And when you blend your coffee, especially if you add in some grass-fed butter or heavy cream, it'll taste like a latte, which is nice.
That's what we're all going for, is the best taste, right?
I'm a huge proponent of that.
Now, my problem is my wife, she can do the sugar-free creamers. I'm still baby enough. I've got to have that sugar in there. Is there a better way of sweetening it without going sugar-free or something like that as well?
Yes. Well, if your goal is to fast in the morning, then I would say try and do it without the sweeteners, just because those will take you out of the fasted state. But if you're not fasting, and if you want just a little bit of sweetener without the sugar, I would say, and you probably will laugh at me for saying this because you might have already tried it, but stevia and monk fruit are two sweeteners. I'm sure that's what your wife is using.
Yes.
That you don't like. Or a little bit of honey is actually, especially raw honey, it can be a great antiviral. It has antiviral properties and it has that sweetness, but it's in real form. It's in sugar form, but it's not that pure white sugar, which is nice.
That's good. Now, again, I want to make sure and let our listeners know website where they can get on the subscription service, get that coffee ordered on a schedule. Also, social media and any other where they can find more information as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the website for the coffee ordering is norrisnaturalscoffee.com. So just Nora, all one word, Nora's Naturals Coffee. And you can use Nora20 for 20% off. We do free shipping. So the coffee is a little bit higher in price, but no cost on shipping, which can just add up, especially in the free shipping world. We're on that train. And then Instagram is, I do daily stories and posts with all wellness related content, and that's at Nora Tobin. So I would love to connect with everybody there as well.
All right. Well, Nora, it has been great to have the chance to visit with you today. Anytime I can sit down and talk coffee over coffee, it's going to be a good day.
Likewise. And thank you again for having me. And again, just such an honor, especially with all the other fabulous guests you have on. So thank you very, very much.
Well, a hotel in the UK will soon be offering stays in a Willy Wonka themed room with lickable wallpaper. This is happening at the Chocolate Box, which is a chocolate-themed hotel in Bournemouth. It's on the southern coast of England, a little over 100 miles southwest of London, if that means anything to you. In addition to the lickable wallpaper, in a variety of fruity flavors I should add, there's also a chocolate fountain with fruit and marshmallows for dipping, and bowls of candy that can be restocked at no extra charge. The room key even looks like a golden ticket. Oh, and you can take a bath in chocolate if you want to. Now, it's actually not that expensive to stay there either. It's about $277 a night, but chocolate baths are extra, about $208 per. And by the way, the lickable wallpaper is changed in between guests. You remember the legendary band Creedence Clearwater Revival? We've got the drummer, Doug Cosmo Clifford, got a brand new project. Actually, it's been a project in the works for a day or two. We'll visit with him for all the money in the world. And first off, Doug, I appreciate you taking some time to be on the show, sir.
Oh, Cameron, thanks for having me.
Now, I mentioned this project has been in the works for just a little bit. And Doug, tell us the story behind the music. When did this project officially start for you?
Mid-'80s. It started with Steve Wright from the Great King Band, bass player. He's from my hometown, as it turned out. He came to my house one day and introduced himself, said he was a fan, and he was a bass player. And I said, I love bass players. I'm a drummer, so, we're down in the trenches. And makes for a pretty solid rhythm section. We started co-writing, and I said, we need to record this stuff, otherwise we're going to just forget it. And so we started recording it, and in the middle of producing this thing, I said, this thing sounds pretty good. We should probably put a band together and see what we can do. So we went ahead and finished mixing and getting enough material to send to a label, and that sort of was in the works, but they wanted to come see us play, and we weren't doing any playing out, which was not my idea. And I said, we need to get out. Long story short, we didn't get out, and we didn't get a deal. So into Cosmo's Vault it goes. And what you heard, there's 11 songs on there, and there's 3 guitar players. Note, I might add. Joe Satriani comes to mind, Greg Douglas, and Jimmy Ryan, all the guys that have been in the Great King Band at one time or another, and all guys that have done tremendous things. Joe, of course, heavy metal, burn the fingernails off. Speed, tremendous player, and the other guys, Steve Miller Band with Greg, and then Jimmy with Greg Kin, and I think Eddie Money. Anyway, the recordings are sessions that I had done, so there's like multiple sessions spent over time that the guitar players are on. I wouldn't have one or all 3 at one session. So I asked Joe if he wanted to be in the band. He said no, he was going to do a heavy metal instrumental album. And we all rolled our eyes and thought, oh boy, good luck with that one. I know about Last Laughs, and boy, did he sure have that on us. And he turned out to be, this guitar phenomenon, and he's on 4 songs on this sort of record. Did a terrific job.
Doug, as you went into the vault and pulled these tracks out, what was the big concern as you go to pull these tracks out for release?
Well, early on, when I first pulled them out, I forgot that I had them. And I thought, these are 35-year-old tapes. I don't dare put it on a machine and turn the on switch and probably throw tape all over the room. So I talked to a friend of mine who was an engineer, and he said, well, we can bake them. And I said, we're not talking about brownies here. We're talking about tape. He says, ha, ha, ha. And, but there's a process you do, low temperature, and heat them. And then you have a short window to play them to see if they, in fact, are still good. And everything that was in there turned out to be good. And I have about 6 or 8 albums with the stuff in there with different artists, and just a real solid bunch of music. And this the album, the Clifford Wright album, For All the Money in the World, is right now is my favorite record.
Doug, has that always been the way it's been for you? The current release or the current project is your favorite? Is it kind of like kids? The newest is the favorite? Is that how it goes for you?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know that there would be another reason for it, but I listen to it, and I listen to it as I'm listening to another band. There's a lot of distance between when I put it in and when I took it out. So, but everybody played great on it. Kind of a super session of guys, top guys. Steve Wright is no slouch on the bass, and he's passed. So this is a good opportunity for his legacy. People to hear how good he is, and with, of course, the rhythm section on the record. And then we have all these great guitar players, and some of the keyboard stuff is just terrific. So, it's right now we need uplifting rock and roll. Just it's good for the soul. It's medicine for me, and it just takes you away from the shit that's going on. And pardon my French. That's why I want to share it with the world. These guys it'll never happen again. It can't, because Steve's gone, and we'll never get this cast of characters together again. And so it's exciting.
That's right. And again, the album For All the Money in the World, available August 27th. And Doug, I always want to make sure and let our listeners know where to find the best information on the upcoming album.
Well, you can go to my website. That's DougCosmoClifford.com, all lowercase. You can go to places that download music. Clifford Wright, For All the Money in the World. So, pretty much the standard spot.
Well, again, Doug Clifford, it has been a true privilege to have the chance to visit with you. Love the new music. Actually was jamming into it when we got connected. So hope you have a great rest of your week, and hopefully we can catch up again, Doug.
Sounds good, Cameron, and I appreciate your time.
Now, the hard seltzer trend has been losing steam. Could hard soda be the next thing? Well, Pepsi announced they'll start selling boozy Mountain Dew next year. They're partnering with the Boston Beer Company, which owns Sam Adams, and the hard seltzer brand Truly. They're calling it Hard Mountain Dew, and it's 5% alcohol. So about the same as hard seltzer and beer. But unlike normal Mountain Dew, it won't have any sugar. And there's no caffeine either. A photo of the cans shows 3 different flavors. The first one is Original Mountain Dew. The other 2 are Watermelon and Black Cherry, and they will hit stores early next year. Our final guest on the episode, he's got All kinds of things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about growing up in Maui. We're going to talk about some world records. We're going to talk about the memoir, Racing with Aloha. We've got Fred Haywood on with us today. And first off, Fred, I appreciate you taking some time and being on the show.
Yeah, well, aloha from Maui, I guess I should say firsthand. Thank you very much.
Tell us, where did the idea for the book first come about? Was this something that you'd been maybe tinkering, writing, journaling or something, and maybe shared with somebody? How did it get started in the first place?
Well, I grew up on the beach in Kahului, Maui, which wasn't spectacular, but it was an oceanfront location. My parents, my dad was a doctor, and he often took trades for payment. You know, he was taking care of the sugar plantation people who had immigrated to work, and they had set up camps on Maui. They had the Filipino camp, the Japanese camp, the Chinese camp. And so Dad was their doctor and went and did house calls in the camp for $1 a visit back when he came here in 47. I was born in 49 on Maui. And Dad had traded some of those visits for surfboards, boats, El Toros. So we had water sports at our disposal growing up, and we ran barefoot in Kahului for years before any stoplights were on the island. We had a train going by Kahului that we would smash our coins on. It was, exciting for us, but we had quite an outdoor lifestyle, and it continued. And I got into my swimming with my brothers because I think Mom just didn't want to have us raging all the time, and took us to the swimming pool and dumped us on the coach, who was actually there was a book called The 3-Year Swim Club and the coach was Suichi Sakamoto. But one of his swimmers was our coach, Benny Castor. I proceeded on to high school, and I was actually swimming in a pool that was a raft constructed by my coach, Jerry Damon, and anchored in the harbor, not where I was living, but now I was over in the big island of Hawaii, swimming in the raft in the ocean. And that was our workout pool. That particular coach, Suichi Sakamoto, that was the coach of the 3-year swim club, he did a trip across the U.S. with a group of swimmers, which I attended when I was 16. And I had a tap on my shoulder on the first meet we swam at. And I turned around and said, "Hi." And this kid says, "Are you from Hawaii?" And I said, "Yes, my name is Fred." And he says, "Oh, my name is Mark Spitz." A chance meeting. I watched him swim. I came home to Maui, to the big island, and told my coach, "This kid's going to beat everybody in the nation, and he's fantastic. He's only 15 and he's beating all the other age groups." Anyway, Mark proceeded on in 1972 to win 7 gold medals with 7 world records. So my prophecy was correct. I came back to Santa Clara the next year and started swimming with Mark. My coach helped me get in to the team and coordinated my housing with the family. I had a miraculous rise to stardom, quite frankly.
Now, swimming isn't where the all the records and all that come from. Where did the windsurfing, sailing, how did that interest, or was it just the overall love of the water?
It was the love of the water, and it was a little slower in Maui back in the 50s and 60s, and maybe 60,000 people. Now we have close to 200,000 people living here with that many visitors almost daily. Right. It seems it's packed here now. There's stoplights everywhere. It's totally changed. Well, what happened at the swimming pool was one day I was working out, and we were doing 4,100-yard repeats in high school. And we had 10 seconds rest between each one. And we had to go again, go again, go again. And a 5-minute break on each set of 10. I had swam 20 against Mark Spitz, and I could tell how well I was doing by the size of his bubbles coming off of his feet. But smaller. I wasn't doing as well. It was bigger. I was closer. That's as close as I could get to him. I was frustrated. I turned over on my back and swam 10 backstroke. But on the lane next to me, this gentleman, Mitch Ivey, he was the number one swimmer in high school in backstroke. So it was real frustrating. And I was experiencing the same thing with Mitch. And after the 30th one, Mitch commented that I had the ugliest backstroke he'd ever seen. I got a little upset. I went underwater, I screamed underwater, came back up on top of the lane and held on and said, Mitch, you have the prettiest backstroke I've ever seen in my life. What do I have to do to look like you? I went from thinking about punching him to asking him in a real friendly gesture. He showed me on the side of the pool how to throw a towel at the pool deck and changed my stroke forever. We jumped back into the pool. And at first 2 or 3, I beat him. And he says, well, you're just trying hard. I said, no, this feels really good. Feels really good, Mitch. On the 9th one, he renamed my mother and said, let's race. I said, okay. So I did a push start. And I swam the best time of my life on the 40th repeat in backstroke. And I was a freestyler. I thought I was coming over to swim with Mark Spitz. And a week later, I go into high school, meet with Mitch and beat him and set a high school record. Coach tells me he's only going to take Mark to the nationals, but now he's got to take me, and he better take some more kids, including Mitch. So we all went down to the nationals, and 2 weeks later, I won a national championship and had improved almost 5 seconds in a 50-second race.
Wow!
So I had a 10% jump in time, which is unheard of. And I thought, oh, this was such a from the slowest pool to the fastest pool story. And I'm in the middle of it. I thought, oh, I could write a book. And I was 17. So when I first thought about writing a book was at 17. Now I'm 71 and I finally got it together. And I'm still 17. I'm just a little dyslexic.
Something like that, right?
Right.
Now,
they got me into Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
I finished there, came home, and I still loved the water sports, and I dreamt of surfing, better surf than we already had in Maui, which is pretty spectacular. But I went to Indonesia and surfed some of the best waves, and was one of the first people that at one of the better surf spots on the south point of Java. And I came back and started my real estate career. I got into real estate so I could go surf around the world. And I used my very first commission to buy a ticket to Bali. So my dad goes, well, you just started getting on a roll. What are you doing? I said, no, I accomplished my first goal and I'm going surfing. So my dad was very humble and always taught us humility. And, I had some interesting experiences along the way with Mark Spitz's dad, my dad, and they were total opposites. I could say this, Mark Spitz's dad screamed at me at the dinner table the week before we went to the Nationals because he asked me how I was going to do. And I said, well, maybe if I go a half a second faster, I'll get a third place. And I just improved really well, big time before I had spoken to him. And he asked me 3 times the same question. And finally he slams his hand on the table and says, do you know that second through, there's only one person everyone's going to remember in that pool, and 2nd through 6 are all losers, and don't you ever forget that. And so I had a stroke tip, an emotional tip, and I went down and won the Nationals, and then I'm proceeding in my life, and I'm home from Indonesia now and doing my business. In 1980, interest rates went from 9 to 19%. And all of you listening thinking 2.9 or 2.7 is too much. My goodness, it is such a strong market. It's so good. Mm-hmm. And I'm still selling real estate now. But I had to sell all my real estate when it was 19% because I couldn't afford it. And at the same time, my brother passed away in a traffic accident, Jimbo, and bless his soul. And I thought to myself, what would Jimbo do?
Mm-hmm.
He would want me to make the best of my life. Let's go to next.
Mm-hmm.
So I had just learned how to windsurf with some of the originators. And so we started Sailboards Maui. And I said, I'm going to stop real estate for a few years and do something different and try another sport and see what the heck happens. And a year later, I'm sailing in Weymouth in England and on a prepreg carbon fiber wing mast. Like those boats in San Francisco that are sailing with their fixed rigs. Mm-hmm. Well, I had a spar that was shaped like this, and the back of it was a track, so I could rotate the sail and had a, it was a wing mast, and I used that and broke a world speed record in 1983. And I went, well, this is cool. I came back to Maui, and 4 months later, I was out sailing Hokipa Beach Park in my backyard, kind of. And I had ran into a friend that morning, and he told me that the biggest waves in the world were coming. And he's got a photographer. He's a photographer, and he had hired a helicopter. Mm-hmm. So we were going to get shots. And I said, well, I'm not interested in that. He says, I don't understand it. You're going to be famous if you get out there. I said, but at noon, it's not going to be good. I've been sailing it the last 5 days. It's huge. But at 4:00 or 4:30, the biggest wave's coming, and I'm going to be on that one. I'm only going to ride one wave today. But you go ahead and shoot your shots at noon. I'm okay with missing it. And I show up at 3:00, and they're all on the helicopters going, and there's 4 or 5 guys out, and we're standing on the beach. I couldn't see anybody except once in a while they come up to the top of the wave and go down, and waves were just tremendous, probably 30, wow, 40 feet or something. And I had to sail through it to get out. It took me half an hour, and by the time I got out, the helicopter was gone, all the sailors were gone, and I'm just sitting out there sailing. Anyway, I sailed into the biggest wave I'd ever seen, and came into the beach. That photographer had dropped off in the helicopter and sat up there for a couple hours waiting for me to ride one wave, and he shot a whole roll of film, and he came running down the beach, and he banging his camera on his chest, and you just rode the biggest wave in the world. Wow. And it's going to be much bigger than your world record. Mm. I go, okay, well, whatever. He says, I got a whole roll of film. So within a couple of weeks, I was sponsored by Neil Pride Sales, and I was traveling all over the world for the next 6-7 years windsurfing. Mm. And coming on to Maui and playing on Maui and still doing my water sports. And I maintained my water sports till a few years ago, and now I'm 71, and it's not quite physically up to doing all of these things, but things change.
That's right. Now, what was it like did you know at the time that it was the largest wave that had been recorded? Was that any idea in your mind starting out?
No. Well, I had just envisioned that I could ride a big wave with my equipment. And I always had it in the background that I was going to do it one day. So what I did is I just was ready for it. And he said it was the biggest wave in the world. So we just called it the biggest wave in the world. Within a couple months, my friends took jet skis up to, including Laird Hamilton, and boys went up to Jaws and rode much bigger waves. But they used jet skis to tow in these little boards, and they had foot straps on them and let go and just would run down at full speed in front of the waves. So essentially doing the same thing, being powered into the wave.
Right.
And they were riding bigger waves. And then they've found bigger waves in Portugal now or in other parts of the world. And everybody wants to be the big wave rider.
That you were the original.
I guess I inspired some of them I don't know if I was the original. I think people have been riding big waves all of our lives, somewhere there's big waves. It's all about the stoke.
Yeah.
We kept the stoke going, share the aloha. And I did that throughout my career with all the sports I did and real estate. I've helped people improve their careers, from handing my rig over to Laird Hamilton in France one day, so that my sponsor said that if he could get in the top 3 positions, he would sponsor him. And Laird was in 8th place, and the wind had died down, and I was up in 2nd or 3rd or something, and wind came back up, and I said, "Here, Laird, just take my equipment and make a run." And he did, and he won the contest. And I did that again in Australia with another friend, Anders Bringdahl, and he won the contest with my equipment, because that's all we were doing, was focusing on having the best, fastest, smoothest equipment we could ride, and then taking advantage when it starts to happen, just being on the course. But right, I said, well, I'm 71. I'm going to just start this. And my girlfriend's best friend is a ghostwriter, and she wrote my book with me. And at the same time I decided to do the book, I had stepped off a curb and coincidentally sprained my ankle. But in trying to recover, there were car lights coming at me. I couldn't quite see well, and I landed on my leg and tore all 3 hamstring off my pelvic bone 2 years ago. So this kind of slowed me down, but I actually wrote the book while I was sitting in a hospital bed in my bedroom, and then I proceeded to a wheelchair, and then crutches, and then a walker and whatever. So I just thought, everybody's got adversities. There's always opportunities. I don't think that life is negative. Life is full of abundance. Life is something that you take on with reckless or fearless abandon. You go for it.
Right.
I mean, sure, everybody's got the worries in their pockets and what the heck? What are we here for? But to make it all more exciting, more fulfilling. So now we've got the book marketing going on, and that's another level. I'm doing podcasts and interviews and things. So all being set up by my marketing team, because coming from real estate, I understand marketing. I'm not afraid of marketing, although I wasn't really doing much except reading Facebook beforehand. Right. Now I have to kind of answer to Facebook because of what's being posted. We all just want to make it right.
Now, for you to have Laird writing the foreword on this as well, what does that mean to you on a personal level, Fred?
Well, Laird and I had some incredible adventures ourselves. One day we were out sailing in Honolulu Bay, but we had come from a place called Tunnels up the coast 10 miles. And it was 20 to 30 foot surf, and we had to bash through those waves and sail in some 50 knot winds. And we were way overpowered, and he could be 15 feet away from me, and I couldn't see him because the wave, it was on the other side of the wave. And it was, and I had to cool Laird's jets a little bit. And I said, Laird, stop jumping, because we're 2 miles offshore. There's a 5 knot current. There's 50 knot seas. There's 50 knot winds going on in 30 to 40 foot seas. It's like horrific. So I don't want to pull you in through the shore break or see you be pulled out by the current.
Right.
So he stopped jumping, but we sailed into Honolulu Bay, and we went by a place called Kings that had some 50 or 60 foot waves right next to us. But the chop on them was almost head high. There was so much chop around because the wind was, and the currents were so erratic that it wasn't very safe. So Laird and I have become good friends. Anytime you share endorphins and you're pushing your fear-based life, you're going to remember those times and those people. So Laird and I have a great connection, and I thought, well, I was talking to Mark Spitz about writing the forward too, so he wrote something, but we agreed that Laird was more current. I love Mark Spitz too, but we thought Laird knew me more in the current timetable, so it was great to have Laird write the forward.
That's cool. Now, again, the book is called Racing with Aloha, an inspiring journey from humble barefoot Maui boy to champion in the water. And Fred, I want to make sure and let our listeners know where they can find not only more info about the book, but you talked about marketing, social media, and all that as well. Where's the best place?
Well, racingwithaloha.com. You can go on there and click on that website and go to the bottom and put your email and name in, and the site will send you the first 10 pages, including Laird's forward. And it's pretty exciting. It starts out with that big wave, and my friend telling me I should be there at noon, and I told him I'm not going to get there until 4. Or you can look on social media and put my name on Instagram or Facebook and find me. Or the book is going to be coming out in 2 weeks. Actually, it's being published in New York by Morgan James Publishing. So I have a few copies here at home, but I can't quite give them up to the public because so many of my friends ordered the book. I don't want to undermine them with books out on the table. So only my family has predominantly got the books right now. And I really just wrote the book for a family book. Mm-hmm. And it surprisingly, my writer just forwarded it to a literary agent who a week later called back and said, "Oh, we've got a publisher." So it's just grown beyond my wildest expectations. But I'm thinking that, well, like everything else, sure, okay, let's go ahead and publish it, whatever. I was just thinking self-publishing, but it's quite an exciting story in it, and it has a great message about sharing the aloha, and writing it during COVID, I think it just came out better, and it had a message for people, and I would really recommend it for kids because, like my dad said when I finished Stanford, I said, "Dad, what am I supposed to do now?" He says, "Well, you'll never know what you're going to do. You might want to do something, so just choose to do something and do the best you can at it. And if it works, that's great. And if it gets better, that's great. But if it doesn't work, move on to something else and just do the best you can at it, because you're supposed to be fulfilled in your life, And he says, "Look, I'm a doctor, and I always wanted to be a marine biologist, and I still want to be a marine biologist, and I never was. So I'm kind of frustrated, and I'm pretty successful at what I do, but I'm still not satisfied." And I said, "Well, if that's the journey, that makes it simple, And for so many kids now, there's so much fear-based with everything. Oh, if you don't put this together, you're not going to go there. And you better get into a good college. You better work, study, get ahead, work hard. I mean, everybody's trying to help their children out. And some of them get so frustrated because they can't meet the parents' expectations, and the parents are just saying it wrong. Just do the best you can. If you're the garbage man, if you're the teacher, if you're the janitor, whatever, it really doesn't matter, because fulfillment will come in satisfaction from the work that you do and the joy that you create. So I have a lot of wins and losses in the books. And I always went to next. I didn't wallow in my misery. I just stepped up and said, okay, time to go to next. In fact, in real estate, if we have a hard deal going on and someone's crying about the commission that flew out the door that they didn't make, I said, you got 24 hours to piss and moan about that. And after 24 hours, I don't want to hear about it anymore. Let's talk about what we're going to do next. So I give them a chance to listen to them for a while.
There you go.
Nobody likes whiners.
Not at all. That's something that never changes.
And let's move on. So I have this visual of a pocket on the back of my hip. If something's not working, it's okay.
Next.
But something's always not going to be working. I mean, my dad said half the people are going to like you in life and half of them aren't. So get over it.
That's right.
I don't know you. I like you already.
That's awesome. I like it. Now, again, the book available in 2 weeks, Racing with Aloha. You can look it up online. Again, racingwithaloha.com is the website. Click and put your email address on the bottom and get more information there. And Fred, it has been a privilege to have a chance to visit with you today, sir. I know it took us a little while to get this one booked, but glad we made it happen. And I look forward to the release. And brother, hopefully we can catch up again.
Yeah. Well, I'm keeping the stoke going. Let's go for it.
Well, thanks again for joining us for this 122nd episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. If you ever have a comment, question, anything else you'd like to know, hit me up on the contact page at gqwithcam.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at gqwithcam. If you'd like to help out in the funding for this podcast, visit our merch store where we've got hoodies, shirts, tumblers, mugs, stickers, backpacks, and more. That's gqwithcam.com/shop. And if you do have a special guest idea, email me, gqwithcam@gmail.com. Do want to thank our good friend Brandon Allen for coming up with our theme music. We're going to let him play us out and hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday.